are starting our journey with a group of shots from all over the Arctic, and this time we're running down the Bailey River, which is in the barren grounds of Canada, along the Thelon Game Preserve. We have arrived here just a week after the ice has gone out, and we will see many examples of molting waterfowl, particularly Canada geese. In this picture you will see water rushing in. That is just to show you the kind of volume of water that we have. It is for a very short period of time that you get this volume of water in this river, and by the end of July it's down to a very slow volume. Many wildlife experiences can be had because most of the animals come to this river during the summer. It's a great source of food. Here we will see white-fronted geese come flying by. I was very lucky to capture white-fronted geese as they flew by. This is a ptarmigan that has not started to molt yet. It's a male, and it's acting as a decoy. Watch how it lands. Flies up high and then shoots straight down. This is a common loon just on its way down the river, and in the background is some beautiful ice. Note the colors the ice has. It's interesting. This is an overview of our paddling conditions, and here is another male ptarmigan which has started to molt. It's hard to believe a bird can have a call like that. They act as a decoy for the female, which molts fully. It's very easy to just about step on one when a female is roosting on its eggs, because it looks exactly the same as the tundra, and they flush at the last minute. Here in the foreground is a small herd of caribou. The caribou are migrating southward as we are heading northward on the flow of the river. The river in the foreground is moving at about 7 knots. Here is a rainbow which spans the river from side to side. It occurred the morning of July 1st. I thought it was a delightful combination of date and situation. So often in the barren grounds you see silhouettes of everything, because when you are running the river you are at the lowest level. Now is a herd of muskox, and in the foreground is some columnar ice, which was unusual. Most ice is horizontal. And here's a typical silhouette that is characteristic of scenes in the barren ground. Quite different than the other types of travel we will be showing. In the foreground is a Lapland longspur, which is hunting up bugs that have been caught in the river and the floods from the rain we've had for a couple of days. He's busy looking around. From the left comes a view of a ruddy turnstone, and the little ruddy turnstone, as you can see, is busy doing the same thing. Only this ruddy turnstone isn't turning the rocks over. As you can see, these rocks are a little too large for him, but he's spending his time looking for things to eat. Standing perfectly still, these birds were very content to go about their daily look for food. As long as we were perfectly still, they didn't bother them that we were so close to them. Here's the Lapland once again. And in a minute you'll see both birds on the same screen. This was a back eddy where all the bugs were sort of floating in and getting caught. Here is our ruddy turnstone inspecting very closely. Now, watch in the middle of the screen, you'll see a little black dot bob up, and that's the head of a grayling. Now, I am showing you the water environment which supports all of these fish. And here is a fly floating by. The plethora of hatching insects is a grand source of food for the larger animals that congregate along this river as well. This is a horned lark, which is one of the other tundra birds that subsist largely on insects. Just around the corner we came upon a wolf, which was following the herd for stragglers and weak animals. It was a very lovely moment to be able to be so close to this very shy animal. Because we were on the water, this was our spectacular opportunity. The wolf, after a few moments, did feel that we were was now fleeing. This is typical of any animal that feels threatened. Now these caribou have decided to avoid the marauding insects. The mosquitoes have just started. This is the beginning of a large herd of caribou that have decided, just as we're coming down the river, that they are going to cross. Now you will see the rest of the herd starting to come along. We simply paused because we did not want to become entangled with all those antlers you can see. And finally, after waiting for about 45 minutes, we discovered that if we proceeded to sort of head them off from where they were starting out, that they would shy away, and that gave us the opportunity to continue going down the river without having to wait for another half an hour or more. It was most exciting to observe the herding behavior of these animals. Wolf chasing Canada geese, which are flightless. Two of them. Two puppies, wolf puppies, and the mother. That's why they were sort of clowning around. Caribou have just migrated through this area. They're learning how to hunt. That's why they're chasing the geese. Mother has the goose. Another one. Here among the willows are muskox. Muskox happen to love eating willows, and that's why these creatures are just having a lovely time. It was very strange to round the corner and see willow trees waving very violently with no means of propulsion until we came upon the muskox down below, stripping all the leaves and small branches off of them. We were floating gracefully by. The muskox were perfectly content dining on their favorite delicacy. And it was just exquisite to be so close. This one is sort of looking at us while we're looking at it. The muskox is a cross between goat and sheep. They're very agile. They have very long hair called quivet. It's almost 3 feet long, some of it. Their hair is very, very warm. And it's once again peering over the edge of the bank, wondering what are those silly kayaks down there. It's wandering along, the typical of grazing animals, going from place to place. And then it's periodically checking its territory. These are gulls flying up the river looking for food. They have come quite a distance. And here is an overview of the back river which we congregated with, which is very large. In the foreground is a pair of old squaw which are in the process of mating, and they will soon have a family. And in the immediate foreground are the incredibly numerous mosquitoes. This is a silhouette. It's a very low light condition, and it's to show you that muskox calves have the same conformation as the adults, and they're just several sizes smaller. There's an Arctic tern, and in the background is a pair of loon. The tern is busy diving for food. We are on the back river near a rapids that goes around an island a few miles from the confluence of the Bailey River. I increased the shutter speed of my video camera to 4,000 to capture this elegant flight that this bird has. Here is a pair of red-breasted loons. This is a view from Cape Cod off Narwhal, and we are in Pond Inlet now, the northern tip of Baffin Island. Across the other side is Bylot Island, with peaks that are 1 mile high. We were very lucky to happen to have stopped here, and a pod of narwhal came by on their way down to Milne Inlet, where there is lots of food for them. There's a very large population every year of beluga and narwhal that come to Pond Inlet. These are the footprints of a fox that came to visit me while I was sitting alone in Pond Inlet, just contemplating my world. The fox came by to see what I was doing. Here is a large pod of harbor sea. I was on the water in my kayak at this time. Next we are in Barrow, Alaska, which is at the same latitude as Pond Inlet, and we are looking at phalaropes that are busy feeding. This is their typical behavior. I was alone on this trip, and as I sat very quietly with my video camera in hand, these little phalaropes were busy eating their dinner. The close details which my camera has captured was most exciting to watch. In the foreground is a dunlin, which is also doing the same thing as a phalarope, looking for dinner. Many birds migrate in the Barrow area across the point of Barrow, which is the northernmost part of the United States. The dunlins are in their summer plumage with their brown backs and black bellies. They're fairly large for a sandpiper. Here we have a white-winged scoter just heading out from the shore. Overhead we have a jaeger. It's an absolutely beautiful bird to watch it fly. It has great skill as it glides over the tundra. A typical bird of prey with very good eyesight, and they cover many miles when they fly very quickly and easily.
An Arctic fox has just woken up, and he seems to be barking at me. He's very interested in what I'm doing here in the Arctic. He is watching me while I'm watching him. He's light tan. This type of thing you see when you're alone in the Arctic.
This is a pair of common eiders floating around. We are back in Point Barrow, and we are watching Sabine's gulls. A small type of gull, very colorful and elegant to look at. Quite different than the ordinary herring gulls, glaucous gulls, and blackback gulls, because they are so much more delicate in appearance. They are swooping down to grab shrimp that have come here. They are what you would call krill. They're small, but they're very tasty and a major component in the Arctic food chain. And the following day came a large numbers of capelin, and the Inupiat people that lived there in Barrow love to scoop up the fish, the capelin, which are similar to our smelt. They're in the same family. Here are the shrimp in close detail for you that the Sabine's gulls are working over, feeding on. Whenever a school of fish or large number of shrimp came in, these gulls would be very busy out there. Now we are in northwest Greenland, in the fjords. This is a fox that has come down to dine on the remains of a dinner we had the previous evening, which was composed of mussels, clams, and scup. I was as motionless as possible, so the fox was not aware of my presence for quite some time. This fox is a darker brown, you notice, and in the wintertime it will be a silver fox instead of the more common white fox. I was completely alone at this time. I paddled the fjords of Upernavik alone in my kayak. Now the fox is off to other places, looking for dinners. It was such a delight to be able to have been so close to one of these little wary creatures. Here is a pair of king eider. I'm camping on a point, and just tucked inside of my tent. I don't dare stick my head out. I don't want to alarm these wary ducks. They're diving for food. There's a good current that comes by here. There's an iceberg in the background. The rocks in this area were highly lithified. They were flinty. They rang when you walked over them. Here is a pair of common eider and my kayak in the foreground. This is some more common eider. This is something we have in our area on the coast of Connecticut, a cormorant, or commonly known as a shag. Watch the typical takeoff. Ducks certainly don't fly like this. Here is a northern fulmar. And watch how it flies. It's quite unlike a gull. They fly so quickly it's hard to capture them. But they fly and then they glide. A very controlled glide. The rougher the water, the closer they come to my boat. Let's take Glaucus go. That is an auk. They fly so quickly it's very difficult to capture them. These are northern fulmars once again, and they're feeding in the wake of icebergs. For some reason there's a large concentration of food in association with icebergs, and these birds are taking advantage of this availability of food. Here's a typical glide of your northern fulmar. I had seen them feeding on pteropods or sea butterflies in Pond Inlet some years earlier. The head once again. And here is a bunch of eider. This is a raven. We're now in Lax Fjord. And these are gulls. I was in the low part of the fjord where gulls happen to like to graze. They do not nest on the outer areas of the fjords. They're always in the secluded inner reaches of fjords. These are the chicks, and I am afloat with my kayak, and there's a bit of a 15-knot wind blowing me, which explains why the picture bobs up and down so much. But I was very lucky to be this close, and that they happen to be nesting so low on the rock cliffs. Now we are in northeastern Greenland at 73 degrees north, and we're watching semi-palmated plovers as they're busy touring the beach, sitting perfectly still. These little guys didn't mind my presence. It was lots of fun to watch them dash in and out of the waves. They sort of remind me of little wind-up toys that move sporadically from moment to moment. Here is a jaeger, which has a young that it has been feeding in King Oscar's fjord on northeast Greenland. And in the foreground we have a pod of narwhal with tusks this time. It was a very rare sighting. In this area they're not so common as in Pond Inlet on Baffin Island. It was a pod of about 12 of them making their way up, and they were at least a mile away from me at this time. Now we are in the Bay of Flowers, and in the foreground will appear some red-breasted loons, a pair of them. The Bay of Flowers was most fascinating because it was a microclimate. On the surface was acidic soil built up by the flora that grew there. The plants and flowering plant grew from a muskox, and this was a very amusing little experience where I encountered this animal having just stepped onto the floor of this valley from a narrow ravine. I'd come up and looked about to see if there were any muskox around, saw nothing, and I'd proceeded about 300 feet, turned around, and to my left, over on the far wall, was this muskox coming out. Then it was the beginning of rutting season in early August, which was disconcerting. The animal is downwind of me, so it is trying to determine what I am by sight. I headed up to where I thought the animal would not go, as I thought it had descended down this ravine, but instead the animal had also headed in the same direction, and when I heard a clatter of its hooves on the thin shale, I realized that we were about to cross paths. Here are ruddy turnstones, and although the shot is a little bit distant, they're engaged in their typical behavior of flipping stones over. We are starting to get out of the sedimentary area, and there is more dolomite or limestone starting to show here. Now we are in Connecticut, at Griswold Point on the Connecticut River. We're watching an osprey. It's the first week of May. In the last 20 years, the population has increased enormously. Here is a common tern out looking for some dinner. And now we are blowing along, the wind behind us. Here's a whimbrel into the foreground. It's a semi-palmated sandpiper, I think. It's hard to identify these tiny sandpipers. Here's another. I believe this is a yellow legs. That's the typical call of a whimbrel. Some of them will just sort of run away, and others will fly, and some will stay. Here's this sandpiper busy taking a little bath. This is what you might expect from a yellow legs, carrying on a bit. We're once again across the other side, looking at a little sandpiper.
Out of the water now, standing there. See how long his legs are. Tiny little guy. Oh, there he goes. Look.
This is a pair of roseate gulls contemplating courtship. Here's a pair of dunlin and a least sandpiper in the background. They're taking advantage of the motion of the water generated by the wind. It's pushing me along in my car. Because I'm nearly motionless, these birds are not up out of my proximity. I just think it's very strange. Watching my kayak. These are roseate terns in active courtship. The males are very busy gathering small fish to present to the females. It's very comical and delightful to watch their behavior. I have placed my kayak paddle into shallow water just to show you the enormous amounts of small creatures that are available in these spring waters that are loaded with nutrients. This is a semi-palmated plover in the light phase, one which we saw in the Arctic just a few moments ago. They come here and nest on the ridge of the sandy tip of Griswold Point. Here's an osprey coming over the point with a fish in its talons. And here's a muskrat. The muskrats I saw a couple weeks earlier were mating, and now they're busy building a nest.
And now they're out getting things to build with and looking for food.
Overhead we have a white or snowy egret. These are ruddy turnstones in their winter plumage. It's early May. Now we're looking over Griswold Point, and here is a snowy egret. This area, I believe this is a mockingbird. Back and forth, back and forth. A muskrat that is busy. They're building their new home. And this is one of the delights of paddling a kayak, is that you can sneak up on muskrats and they hardly know you're there. Here is a snowy egret that is gathering its dinner. It's just so delightful to be able to watch this bird while it goes through all of its characteristic hunting patterns for getting food. I believe these are some willets, and this is another mockingbird proclaiming its territory. Here's another willet. Now we will move back out onto the point here, and we are looking at plovers, semi-palmated plovers. They have come here to nest, and now they're in their mating mode, and territoriality is coming out. You will notice that they are brown on the backs. You don't see the light face among these birds. This is the same species of plover that I showed you earlier in the Arctic. These are roseate terns, and they're in their mating.
Presentation ceremony. This is the presentation ceremony. The male presents the female with some fish. And she sort of sits there and says, oh, I don't know. Maybe yes, maybe no. In the same little area, there's roseate terns. They're not yet in the mating season for them. They just arrived.
I believe this is a godwit, judging by its turned up beak. This is an aerial view of the Connecticut River. We're heading south, and this is the Old Lyme sign. Not Island. And it's Essex on the opposite side. This is Cornfield Point. This is Griswold Point. We're doing a go-by just to give you an overview of what Griswold Point looks like. It's on the east side of the Connecticut. This is the delta currents which come out of the Connecticut River. Now we are in Stony Creek, which is up the coast, and we're looking at two black-headed gulls. In the foreground we are looking at some semi-palmated plover in the winter configuration. This is in December, and it's interesting to watch these little fellows feeding. We're on some small rocks off of Pine Orchard, and this is the marine environment close up to show you the different kinds of algae that grow here. These are purple sandpipers in combination with the plovers. And here is a crow, a fish crow, which is a specialized bird that lives in This is the environment which supports our shore birds, and these birds are very highly specialized. I've paddled many miles in this area, and only on these few little rocks off of Pine Orchard, due west from Rogers Island in Stony Creek, do I find these birds. And I've looked on many other rocks in the area, and just simply do not find this configuration of birds on those rocks. Evidently the food supply is best on. This is in greater detail once again, and to further illustrate the water, here is what it looks like with my white paddle as a background to show you the macrophysi, or large seaweeds. There is a crow once again flying off